More than 3 years of killing and maiming had shown Union General William T. Sherman that defeating Confederate armies on the battlefield was not enough to win the war. On November 15, 1864, after taking Atlanta, Sherman's army set out on a 1,000-mile march across the South. The general pursued a new strategy: to terrify Southern civilians and destroy their support for the war by bringing its brutality to their very doorstep.
Military necessity is what animated Sherman to conduct these destructive operations, but he understood that they were going to have a psychological effect on the Confederate civilian population.
Sherman marched forward through Georgia with 67,000 soldiers and no base of supplies. His plan to terrorize the people of the South included having his massive army live off the land. Sherman could easily support his men by raiding the Confederacy's fertile breadbasket and at the same time eliminate a vital source of food for the rebels.
His troops had to go onto people's property and take their food and livestock, and they were not always gentle about it. And of course it would be terrifying to have soldiers come onto your property in that kind of a way. But you do have to ask the question, what kind of action is typical and what is atypical?
Historians point out that though violent acts did occur, they were the exception, not the rule, and were not tolerated by Sherman and his officers.
Murdering civilians was out of bounds. And that's a key difference, I'd argue, between what Sherman's troops did and what terrorists do. You know, what's at the heart of terrorism is the taking of lives.
Rape and murder were prosecuted vigorously, and stories of both have been widely exaggerated. There were relatively few instances of it, but there always are instances of that anytime you have an invading army.
Sherman himself denounced these incidents of barbarism as out of line with his official policy: to spread fear through the destruction of property, not the harming or killing of people. And yet, when it came to the state of South Carolina, the first state to secede from the Union, Sherman knew his men would be even harder to control.
Sherman quite clearly understood that his soldiers were prepared to unleash havoc on the state of South Carolina. He said, "I almost tremble for South Carolina's fate, but feel like it deserves everything that it's going to get."
Armed with torches, drunken soldiers burned indiscriminately, setting ablaze private homes, barns, government buildings, even a convent. By morning, the city lay smoldering, a burned-out ruin. Sherman expressed regret for the destruction of the city, but years later he wrote, "Though I never ordered it and never wished it, I have never shed many tears over the event, because I believe it hastened what we all fought for, the end of the war."
Trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored, he hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terror.